Great. We're going to get started now with our lunch and learn. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sylvia Sadowski, and I'm the Strategic and Business Planning Advisor in PED. And I'd like to welcome everybody to our first PED Lunch and Learn for this year. I am getting a little bit of feedback. If I can just ask everybody to mute your microphones if you're not speaking. All right, so welcome back to those who join us regularly, and a warm welcome to those who are joining us for their first time. I hope the session will provide some valuable insight into the work being done across the corporation, as well as in our department regarding equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. Over the past 2 decades, EDIA has become an increasingly important and more recently mandatory consideration within municipalities. Today, the City of Hamilton's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Steering Committee representatives will be sharing information about what the city is working on to support important priorities along the PED EDI strategy. We also have our reps from the department who will share information about their work plan and next steps that are coming ahead for the department. Our presenters for this session are Bob Nuttall, Manager of Building Inspections. I want to give everyone a wave. Our next person is Deborah Seabrook, Program Manager of Sites and Museums. Both Bob and Deborah are the representatives for PED on the steering committee for EDI. And our other speakers are joining us today from the City Manager's office, and they are Jenica Gong, and she is our EDI Senior Project Manager, as well as Brianne Richardson, our EDI Business Partner. So a few housekeeping notes before we get started. This Lunch and Learn will be recorded for those who couldn't attend today, as well as for new employee onboarding. Please ensure that your microphones are muted. And there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation where you can raise your hand and you'll be called upon to ask your question to one of our presenters. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Deborah to start off the presentation with the Land Acknowledgement Statement. Over to you, Deborah.
Thank you. So the City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, which is North America, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich heritage and history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Just a brief intro and what we'll be talking about today for an agenda. So thank you, Sylvia. You've kind of given us a bit of an introduction already. Deborah and I will kind of cover some of what we deal with on the steering committee a bit further in the presentation. We'll be talking about we'll have an introductory video from the city manager, Jeanette Smith. We'll be talking about what is EDI and why it's so important. We'll go through a few key definitions of EDI. We'll be talking about internal PED data and some of the things that we've learned over the last couple of years. We'll be talking about what we're doing and what you can do as well. And then we'll have a bit of a Q&A at the end. So let's move on and we'll show you guys the video.
For me, equity, diversity, inclusion is very important for the City of Hamilton. It's certainly one of our strategic priorities. It's consistent with our values. But, we provide public service. We're delivering service, we're designing new services, we're developing policy to take to council. And if we don't think about the diverse makeup of our community, whether that's gender, sexual orientation, abilities, we won't design programs that are meeting their needs. And we may inadvertently design programs that are excluding people without us even realizing it. So it's really important that we start ingraining EDI, or equity, diversity, inclusion, in our policy development, our program delivery, input into our programs, etc.
Just give Brianne a minute to bring the PowerPoint back up. I just wanted to thank you, Sylvie, for your introduction, and Deborah for your land acknowledgement. My name is Jenica Gong. I'm the Senior Project Manager for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And to kick us off, I wanted to walk us through our IDEA strategic plan principles. You'll notice that we are using EDI and IDEA interchangeably. We're moving towards IDEA. And the next couple slides, we're going to look into what is EDI or IDEA and the importance of why we're doing this. For everything that we do, we have to align it to our strategic plan principles. We want to ensure that all aspects of our city are built on the principles of inclusion achieved through diversity, equity, and accessibility, or IDEA. We want to create, foster, support, and ultimately sustain a city culture whereby all people feel a strong sense of inclusion, empowerment, and opportunity for development and growth. I'll hand it over to Deborah to walk us through and Brianne to walk us through some key definitions.
Okay, so we're just going to, so everybody's on the same page, we're going to share some of the definitions. So inclusion, to the extent to which diverse members of a group feel valued and respected. It is often referred to as a sense of belonging. Diversity is a term used to encompass the acceptance and respect of various dimensions, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, religious beliefs, age, physical abilities, place of origin, and education. So one saying that we like to share is diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance.
And just some further definitions. So equity is a condition or state of fair, inclusive, and respectful treatment of all people. Equity does not mean treating people the same without regard for individual differences. And accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring everyone along the continuum of human ability and experience can acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services in an equally effective and integrated manner with substantially equivalent ease of use. So just to cover off what the difference between equality and equity is, we have an image here that kind of gives an idea of how to differentiate the two. So you'll see in the visual, in treating people equally with equality, the top part of the image, it would mean providing the same bike to everyone. So here you can see you have an individual on the left who won't be able to ride the bike. The second individual that appears to be very uncomfortable and too large for this specific bike. Someone who is comfortable with the bike that's been provided to them, and an individual who's clearly too small for that specific size of bike. Now, if we're looking at equity on the bottom half of the image, this would require providing different sizes and types of bikes that would be suitable for the person and that would optimize their performance. As you can see, the first individual has been given a hand cycle that requires pedaling with the use of their arms rather than legs. The second individual is given a larger bike that they can comfortably use, And the third individual is still cruising along comfortably with the bike that they were provided. And the fourth is given a smaller bike to fit their smaller size. So as you can see the difference here, equity takes into consideration individual differences and solutions that are tailored to those differences.
Thanks, Brianne. So with a couple of the kind of, I guess, key definitions that we have for EDI or IDEA, I think it's important to understand the why and kind of why we're doing this, why it's so crucial. Organizations that make inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility core to their operational culture with defined policies and intentional behaviors at all levels create better performing teams. By maximizing the power of different perspectives and backgrounds, including varying points of view in teaming and decision-making, organizations become stronger, perform better, and report higher levels of employee engagement. As the data flowed in from organizations championing EDI or IDEA, the financial case became clear. When employees feel they are valued, included, and fairly evaluated, they are happy, more engaged, and less likely to resign. The next slides will go over some of the business case of doing the status quo.
Thanks, Bob. So building on that statement, we have here a slide that illustrates the cost of the status quo. So the City of Hamilton conducted a study using real data in 2020 on what the cost would be for the organization if we did nothing. And the financial impacts illustrate a very telling story. So here's a summary of the costing implications if we do not do anything or if we maintain the status quo. In the first column on the left, we look at the cost of attrition. And this is specific to fiscal year 2020. In 2020, we were in the middle of the pandemic, and so attrition was actually lower than usual. Also, attrition being when an employee exits the organization. This means we need to recruit, onboard, train, as well as catch up on lost work from that employee that left. The $3 to $9 million projection for the cost of attrition due to EDI. So those employees that leave due to inequitable policies or feeling excluded, etc. With the approximate cost of attrition per employee being $22,019. So in 2020, there were 445 exits. If 30% of those 445 exits were due to EDI, so 134 employees, the impact would be $3 million within a fiscal year. If 100% were due to EDI, we'd see a $9 million impact. So huge costing implications associated with not doing anything. In the middle column, we have human rights. There are costs associated due to human rights complaints in the amounts of hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 2020, the fees associated with human rights tribunal cases and internal investigations was $620,000. The amount, of course, increasing over a period of time. And on the third column, we have disengaged employees. We see a considerable cost for those employees that don't leave, that may not be feeling great in their role, or are very disengaged as a result, disengaged, and as a result, they are not performing as effectively as they could be at optimal level. How did we get the $25.5 million cost impact? What the review found was that based on an average annual salary of $77,684, that if 22% of employees were disengaged 30% of the time in their role, that this would result in $25.5 million of lost engagement to the organization. The cost increases if more employees are disengaged or for a larger percentage of their role. So we know that there is a huge cost of doing nothing or of maintaining the status quo, but we're not doing nothing. We're here, we're learning about EDI or IDEA and how to get involved. And we have a dedicated team advancing the strategy. So for the next couple slides, we're going to be doing a panel roundtable on what we are doing in our respective areas to advance IDEA. So I'll go over mine first as the Senior Project Manager for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I've been in role for coming up a year now, and the main objective of what I'm doing is operationalizing the EDI framework. You'll see here the graphic. You'll see this a lot in any EDI presentation because it's really informing what we're doing from a consistency point of view. So we're advancing the EDI through a strategic implementation plan guided by the EDI framework. So the visual you see here is made up of 6 components. And from an organization point of view, what we're doing is advancing EDI through a shared business case for EDI, which you've seen some elements of. We brought a consultant in several years ago to conduct a systems review and provide a recommendation report, which included the creation of this EDI team. We have in development comprehensive communication plans. So we're developing a communication runway for 2023, which will include elements of what we're doing from an EDI summary point of view and how we're going to communicate it to all of the different levels of the organization. We're also focused on not just data collection, but rigorous data collection, which Brianne will review in her coming slides. So collecting that data is essential to what we're doing to be able to inform our strategy as well as to measure our progress. In terms of demonstrated ownership and that leadership accountability that we're looking for to drive EDI, we've made advancements within the last year in this space, which is really great, including the SLT videos, one of which you saw a small component of it with Jeanette Smith, as well as PAD goals. So this last year, GMs had a PAD goal, an EDI PAD goal that related to the completion of employment equity surveys for 80%, as well as completion of senior leader training, which we received over 90% completion on last year. So we'll have different PAD goals related to EDI this coming year. In terms of applied action planning, so what we're going to do, this includes our training components. So last year we had a people leader training. It was called Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, an e-learning module that was delivered to approximately 450 people leaders. And this year we are progressing through an RFP process through procurement to secure a vendor who will help us create and deliver all employee training for our over 8,000 employees. So in terms of what I'm doing, it's operationalizing the EDI framework and strategic implementation plan, as well as working with the EDI steering committee, which Deborah and Bob will touch upon. So I'll hand it over to Brianne to share a little of what she's doing.
Thanks, Jenica. So as the EDI business partner, the role was just created last year, and I started in September of last year. So I'm still very new to the organization, and we are still building out a lot of what the role is going to be doing. But for a very high level overview, I'll be facing off with the departments and divisions, assisting with embedding the EDI framework into programs, policies, procedures, actions, and goals, and strategizing around EDI data and how it can be used to further that environment of inclusion and belonging and those opportunities for development and growth for City of Hamilton employees that we're looking for. As a very brief example of the EDI data that we have, some or many, hopefully all of you, have completed the Employment Equity Survey that was launched a couple of years ago. And this is a sample of the data that we're using and how we're making that data come alive for the departments. As you can see, circled in red down there at the bottom, we're just shy of our goal of the 80% response rate for PED. Ideally, we would like to get to a 100% response rate, but for now, we're going with 80% so that we can get a good idea of what the data is showing us and how we can present that to the different departments and divisions. And once we get to those goals, we're looking to move that dial from data collection to data utilization. So this data can be used to formulate recruitment and retention strategies, as well as to target internal inclusion programming. Overall, for the organization, we have a 59.9% response rate, and we are closing in on the 80% goal that we are aiming for as we encourage everyone to complete the survey. And this breaks down a little more of what the data can be used for. So here we've compared the response rates for each of the designated groups to the labor market availability for Hamilton. So this is why we're looking for at least an 80% response rate so that we can take the data and use it in real ways such as this to show what employee distribution in the areas are like. And in this case, we can use this data to focus recruitment initiatives around those groups that aren't reflecting the labor market availability in Hamilton. And the reason why we're aiming to do this is because as an organization who provides services to the city of Hamilton, we want to be reflecting the community that we're serving. We want to make sure that our organization is made up of individuals who are actually reflecting the city of Hamilton. And with that, I will pass it on over to Bob and Deborah to speak to some of their steering committee experience and what they are working on.
Okay, thanks, Brianne. So yeah, just a bit of personal reflection for me. So for those who don't know me, my name's Bob Nuttall. I work with the building inspection team for the building division. We have a great deal of interaction with internal and external stakeholders, a wide network of people that we speak to every day in this very diverse community. I was a little bit hesitant in joining the EDI steering committee, kind of wondering what I might be able to contribute, but I can really say that overall it's been an enlightening experience for me. It's really given me an opportunity to kind of reflect, learn, and advance my EDI and A acuity. I think I've really embraced being a champion of EDI, both at work and in my personal life and experiences. So it's really kind of given back to me just being on the committee. My role, I think, or kind of our role as we sit on the steering committee, we've got this really great opportunity to be part of the discussion for change and act as that conduit of information that goes up, down, and across the organization, kind of to all levels, which just kind of filters out to the community as well. So it really works very well. We do meet on a monthly basis with guided agendas through our business partners and senior project managers. And we talk about everything and anything EDI. And we really ask that anybody that has any information to be brought back to the committee to let us know at any time. So, and just that we kind of continue to advocate for those courageous conversations and keep EDIs as standing items, both for our kind of frontline staff and divisional management team meetings as well. As an EDI steering committee member, in collaboration with our EDI project manager and business partners, we also had the opportunity to kind of share and transfer knowledge to our departmental leadership team, who have been a great support through some of their questions and comments back to us, and as well as their directives. So that's been very helpful and supportive as well. EDI, it's that continuous process for me of learning and growth, for which as we look at training opportunities, the new My Learning Connections come out, and there's a lot of really great resources there. So I encourage everybody to kind of jump on and find some of those learning exercises that they can look at. I I would challenge you all to make sure you do all of the training. I guarantee you'll learn something, because I know I did. Just some of the kind of high level conversations that are happening at the EDI steering committee level right now. So we've got an EDI diversity calendar, just recognizing a lot of the major events throughout the year. There is a lot of talk and chatter about a Howie landing page that we're kind of crossing our fingers will be coming very soon. And then just trying to formalize maybe how we're downloading EDI information and some of the communication strategies that surround that. So from my perspective, that's kind of what we're working on. So we're happy to be here today to share this information with you guys as well. So I'll pass it over to Deborah.
Thanks, Bob. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was a really good way to kind of wrap up what we do and our roles on the committee. I have similar reflections. At the beginning, I felt a little unsure about what I could contribute to the committee or what would be asked of me to contribute. And as my learning and understanding of the role grew and enhanced, I became inspired about how I could bring this back to my section and how I could have an effect in tourism culture. So that's my section is tourism culture. I work with Heritage Resource Management, which is the section that works with all the museums, the Hamilton Civic Museums. And as a person working within the museums, we have a unique opportunity. Like Bob suggested, we do a lot of external customer-facing interactions as well as internal amongst our employees. And I like to think that we have a good base of educated, allied individuals that are eager to make change and to embrace the principles of EDI in their work. So it really kind of lays a great foundation to bring new ideas and to bring learning to them because they're also eager to learn. And I guess that's, I'm fortunate in my section and I appreciate that. About a couple years ago, we rolled out a transformative Hamilton Civic Museum strategy, and recently an interpretive strategy, and it kind of guides the activities and engagements and lays the foundation work for a lot of the museums. And based on those strategies, I've been able to provide me with an opportunity to integrate actionable items from the EDI steering committee into my daily work, as well as to create new projects based on those EDI principles. So I get a lot of latitude from my manager and from my senior leadership team to bring new initiatives and to bring that learning and to engage with staff that will benefit the community as well. And just quickly, because I have the platform and I'm just going to plug a couple things that we are doing with the museums. And we're going to be launching part 2 of the Stories of Migration and Belonging, which is on our Hamilton Civic Museum's website. And it is a colleague of mine, Meredith Leonard, has been working with the Hamilton Immigration Partnership Council to capture these stories of immigrants to Hamilton, sharing their experiences that were both inclusive as well as exclusive. And it should be a very fascinating story to catch. So watch our website for that. But at the museums, I tend to be a bit more of an advocate for gender diversity and transgender diversity. And so a lot of what I'm doing right now is focusing in that area with the museums. So I won't go too long because I know we have, I could go on, but I won't. I will turn it back over.
Great. Thanks, Bob and Deborah. So very quickly, we did also just want to touch on what you can do to help to advance EDI or IDEA within the organization. So today and every day, it starts with you as employees. You can be the reason that we all have a true sense of belonging. Our employees play a pivotal role in achieving our vision to be the best place to raise a child and age successfully. So you can do this by reflecting on your own behaviors and identifying opportunities for embedding the framework into your work every day. And think in terms of what you can impact and affect within your scope of work. So we have an analogy that if you come to any other EDI presentation, you will hear it more often than not. We talk about the boulders and rocks. So boulders are issues and items that are larger than one person can fix. So you can just easily picture a boulder and how one person wouldn't be able to move it alone. They can be systemic issues or societal issues, for example, and they would take numerous people working for a length of time to correct and remedy them. However, rocks are those smaller problems or issues that a single person would be able to pick up and move. So as just one example, it could be a form that's used in your position and you notice that it is collecting information on gender. However, it only includes the option of male or female. So putting forward a recommendation to change that form to either no longer collect the information if it's being unnecessarily collected, or in the case where we do want to collect that information and there's a reason for it being collected, changing the form to be inclusive of all genders is moving a rock that could be exclusionary or a barrier to some individuals completing the form. In the same theme, using non-gendered language when addressing colleagues or community members would make a more inclusive and welcoming environment. As more high-level examples, being inclusive in meetings, ensuring everyone is heard at the table, and giving everyone a chance to speak, and even participating in employee surveys, asking courageous questions, and speaking up if you have input or see something that could be bettered in the organization. These are just a few examples of what you can do as yourself to move those rocks. But as you become more familiar with your work, you can reflect and identify more opportunities to embed EDI into everything that you do. And with that, we conclude our presentation and we can move to the Q&A part of the Lunch and Learn.
Great, thanks, Brianne. So for the question and answer session, we're going to ask that if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can specify whether your question is for a specific person or just to the group in general. Now, I don't see any hands yet. So maybe I'll start off with a question. I think it was Brianne that had talked about the employment equity survey. And I think you had noted that PED reached 79.5% response rate. And I think the goal was 80. So it's very close. But I'm wondering if yourself or if anybody on the team has any ideas about in the future, if there is a survey like that, how can PED as a department reach that goal with a greater response rate? Any thoughts or ideas?
Yeah, so we're actually strategizing around this right now as well. We continuously send out reminder emails. We've encouraged people leaders, directors, and GMs to filter it down throughout their departments, divisions, and sections to encourage everybody to complete the survey. We are strategizing around that because we do understand that a number of employees are frontline employees and they're not going to be able to get that time to sit at a computer and complete a survey during their normal day-to-day shift. So it is something that we're working on. It is at the top of our mind as we are working on getting that completion rate to 80 and then hopefully 100%. But it's proving to be something that needs quite a bit of thought around it. And we're keeping it really at the forefront of our minds.
Great, thanks, Brianne. And I think also conversations like that are conversations that are happening like today, I think are also very encouraging and will support people talking about it and filling in the survey and expressing their ideas and opinions. And and getting that percentage up higher for the next time. Is the survey planned to come out again this year?
So for the employment equity survey, it's actually just a continuous survey. You can access it on Howie. If you do not have access to Howie, or it is you're unable to get to it electronically, you can email our diversity email, which is diversity@hamilton.ca, and we can provide you with a paper copy of the survey. So if you are a people leader in an area where you know that your employees under you are unable to get to a computer during the day, you can absolutely reach out to us. We can provide you with a paper copy of that, and then you can provide that to your employees for them to complete and seal in an envelope and confidentially send back to our area to be entered in the system.
Awesome, great. That's really good information. I do see another person who has their hand up, and I'm going to allow Judy Lamb to unmute herself, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks, Sylvia. And it's more a curiosity question. I saw your stat on the cost to the city for attrition due to EDI, and I'm just wondering how do you arrive at that number? Is it is there an exit interview why the person's leaving so that you know it was due to EDI?
I might have to unpack that question a little bit. So related to the exit interview, that's part of I guess the recruitment strategy that we're entertaining. So there aren't exit interviews from my understanding. But it's something that we're discussing as a key data component. So why people are leaving. But the 30% was based on like pre-research that had been done before. So of 100% of exiters, approximately 30% is like the best guess for those that leave due to EDI. So the numbers were based on that. So the I believe it was $3 million. That was based on the 30%.
And those are stats for the city of Hamilton staff, specifically 30%?
Yes. So it was based in 2020 and based on 445 exiters.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Problem.
Great. Thank you, Judy, for your question. Is there any other questions from the group? I see Margaret Fazio has her hand up. Margaret, go
Hi.
ahead.
Sorry, wrong camera is showing me, but I'm not sure. Too many cameras on. My question, it's more of a question, a suggestion potentially. The survey, was it deemed to be compulsory for completion when it was sent out? I don't remember. I filled it out, but I don't remember if it was compulsory or not.
Yeah, so it's required. It's mandatory that employees complete and return the survey. However, there is a prefer not to say option for each question.
Oh, I see. So the return rate is based on the fact that 100% of us responded. However, there were some questions that were left unanswered. Is that what you mean?
So yes. So those that responded are included in the response rate. And so the prefer not to say is a data point for us. It does tell us a story about the workforce.
Okay.
So when we look for example, if we had a department that had a very large prefer not to say response, we would ask why and possibly dive into that, follow up with other surveys, but it is required to return.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So my suggestion was to maybe have everyone gather if for people who were not otherwise available for a survey to respond to the survey, if maybe there could be time created during a staff meeting, say monthly staff meeting for whatever time required, so everyone can answer if they have availability, enough computers available to maybe provide that time during work so that they can do it sort of at the same time, and that it'll be done, and then you'll be assured of a response. But I guess you can't really control for when someone chooses not to answer a specific question. So that's a different strategy. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to build on that, we're always open to suggestions like that. I always take the opportunity for like a group think exercise, not necessarily at this time, but if you have any suggestions for your area as you're working in your everyday, feel free to send them to our diversity inbox as well as to one of your steering committee members. What we're finding in conversations is, and only being here a year, is that there are so many ways to reach employees that are frontline. We've just learned of closed circuit televisions in some areas, so we might be leveraging that as part of our communications plan. Each department has their own specific workforce needs. So right now we're strategizing and prioritizing who we're going to reach first, where we have to close the gap, and it's going to be those that have not reached 80%, which are a couple departments. But for each of those, it requires a unique strategy based on their demographics.
Great. Thank you, Margaret and Jenica, for answering. We have another question from Jennifer Patterson. Jennifer, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure. Thanks so much for the presentation. I'm just out of curiosity, and again, I may have missed this because I came in a little bit late. From a marketing communications perspective, do you have, like, is there a way to profile or put up messages in departments? Like, is there like a poster of sorts that can remind people of behaviors? And is that part of the communication strategy, I guess, or marketing strategy as we move forward?
So great question. It's not currently. We currently don't have our communications plan formalized. We're still gathering information, but we've received several recommendations to incorporate posters. So apparently, in lunchrooms and in offices and even public spaces, that's right, where we're reaching certain people. So it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of throw it out there because I think I have members of our HIPSI team on this call as well. And they actually produced a very, Natasha Hernandez from that team produced a really cool document, or like a kind of a poster that she shares with the HIPSI table. And I thought that was kind of neat, and we may be trying to incorporate that on our floor, at least, just as friendly reminders to everyone of how to behave and how we treat each other, right? So, but it's just another thought. Anyways, so thank you for that.
I love that idea, Jen. Even just to branch out on your idea a little bit, it'd be also very useful for counters that offer services. So service counters, people who are dealing with the public. I think there is an opportunity to have some information there as well on an external kind of audience. I
agree, because I do feel as a city, we are all public servants and we all actually provide customer service. And so I think we should all be mindful of that as we move forward, especially, and again, of course, our team is very public facing or outward facing. So that's something we practice every day. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jen. And I see we have Sarah Wayland who would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hello. Sorry, my screen is just awful. Just wanted to put in a plug for the Hamilton for All campaign that we're launching later this spring. We don't have an exact date for that launch yet, but Hamilton Immigration Partnership Council has been working with the City of Hamilton Community Initiatives area and some other organizations around the city to launch a new version of that campaign, which was around in 2017, 2018. So that could be an opportunity also for some events and some learning and some growth. I also had a question, which is more around the data. You said the city will be collecting a lot of data, and I wondered, is it only for those categories that were listed and under the employment equity survey? Because there's all kinds of diversity that we find, as our experts know, that's not embedded in those categories of women, visible minorities, Indigenous, and people with disabilities. And also just wondering if that data will track people's level, like what grade are they in? Are they directors? Are they managers? Because every organization, I think, becomes more homogenous as you rise to the top.
Yeah, I think I can take that question. It's a great question, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you for the plug for Hamilton for All. I'll surely be participating in a lot of that. So in terms of a lot of data, we're collecting a lot of data, but the types are quite limited. So just as I don't know if we clarified it earlier, but our team, our EDI team, is internal in scope. So all that we focus on is our internal employee workforce. We're not focused on any client-facing data or anything external or customer-focused. So with that being said, with the internal data that we're collecting, we're following, so even though we're not federal, we're following federal employment equity guidelines. There's a robust national program in place for federally regulated employers and federal contractors. And so we're following the four designated groups that they call them. And unfortunately, there's so much more that we wish we could be following. But our approach is that we're collecting data that we can use. So we're comparing apples to apples. We don't have the collection methods yet to be able to compare any other groups. So we're actually using the data that we collect, but that doesn't mean that we can't mature and grow and collect more data and build processes to use them and compare them. So it does seem quite limited in terms of only collecting the 4 designated groups, but we're also still interested in the inclusion practices and everything related to all of the other diversity that exists. So to answer your question, it is just the 4 for the data collection purposes and building dashboards. So to answer the second part of your question, we work with the HR data team, a really wonderful team of these IT experts that are helping us build EDI dashboards for us to use. You saw a snippet of 2 that we use, but they're also building forms. And the forms include our EDI representation breakdown by occupational group, by salary grade, and by, there's one more element, but it does speak to all of the different kind of employment perspectives that we could look at and compare, so that we're not just looking at it overall, like representation per department. We're also looking at it for representation within each occupational group. So we're able to see, for example, within middle and other managers, representation throughout those that are middle and other managers for the 4 designated groups, as well as a salary breakdown. So we have a salary breakdown from those paid highest to those paid lowest within, it's broken down into about 10 sections, and we're able to see the representation across that as well. We're not quite finished those forms with IT, but those will be part of the data package that Brianne sends or faces off with the department and shares with. Thank you for that question.
Great, thank you, Sarah, for your question. I'm not seeing any other hands that are raised. So in the meantime, I might just say that for future Lunch and Learns, if anybody has a project or idea that they are working on or would like to see presented as part of a Lunch and Learn, feel free to let myself know or any one of the Employee Engagement Committee members about your idea and a potential speaker. We're always looking for innovative topics that we can bring and share as a group. I'm not seeing any hands here. Let me just do a quick scan. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have for now. If you have any others, if you come up tomorrow, with a question, feel free to reach out to either Jenica, Deborah, Bob, or Brianne, or at the diversity email, as was mentioned earlier. So with that, that brings our PED Lunch and Learn to an end. I'd like to thank our speakers, Bob, Deborah, Jenica, Brianne, for your presentation and all the effort that you put into putting today's presentation together and your time. And I'd like to thank everybody for being a great audience. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their afternoon. Take care.
Thanks so much for having us.